How do I get people to understand that asking for help is actually strength? And it is. So we're designed. Our humanness is designed to both pursue things independently, and then to be a kind of a we. So that's a me, and the other part is for us to be a we, which means leaning on others. And it's not one or the other in life. It's actually both. So I'm inviting people to welcome their dependent side of their nature and be more willing to turn to others and to ask for help and be able to do that and understand it's actually complimenting others when you ask.
Welcome to the Anthropology Podcast. I'm your host, Megan Walker. As a former naturopathic doctor and anthropologist, I align the intersection of personal performance, purpose, and innovative thinking in badass women working to change the world as entrepreneurs and go-getters. Anthropology is the study and science of what makes an entrepreneur think, feel, and perform in a path compelled by a vision for helping others, solving problems, while building a life on your own terms. Together, we are exploring the health, mindset, and strategies that distinguish the world's best entrepreneurs. This is the Anthropology Podcast. Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 204. I can't believe we have made it this far, and we really are getting our toes wet as we move into 2021. You know, I'm really excited about the potential and possibility of taking the learnings that we had from 2020 and really applying them towards our future. And I can't think of a better guest to help us do that, to integrate all the feelings and all the things coming out of the last year. My guest today, Dr.Joan Rosenberg, is a best-selling author, consultant, media expert, and master clinician. She is a cutting-edge psychologist who is known globally as an innovative thinker. She's an acclaimed speaker and trainer, a 2-time TEDx speaker, and a member of the Association of Transformational Leaders. She is also the author of the incredible book, 90 Seconds to a Life You Love: How to Master Your Difficult Feelings and Cultivate Lasting Confidence, Resilience, Authenticity. And it was released in 2019, not knowing that it was going to be a work for the ages as we moved into the classroom that was 2020. On this episode, I really have the opportunity to pick Dr. Rosenberg's brain about how we sit with the feelings that we have so that it can build a more resilient, capable state of psychology and self as we move into this new year. It is truly my pleasure to introduce you to my friend and someone I respect deeply, Dr. Joan Rosenberg. Dr. Joan Rosenberg, welcome to the Anthropology Podcast.
Well, thank you so much. Always grateful and always honored.
Well, I really am excited to have this conversation, and everyone's having an opportunity to listen to it right at the front of 2021. And 2021, I feel like if it was a person, I'd be feeling for it right now, because there are so many expectations that 2021 is going to be absolutely amazing. And I want to start our conversation off right there once we have a chance to hear a little bit more about your story, how to manage our own feelings in relation to the year that we have ahead of us. And so before we do that, Joan, I'm hoping that you can give my listeners just a little bit of a background and context as to why you are the absolute perfect person to take us through this conversation.
Boy, no pressure. Huh?
No pressure, just like 2021.
Yeah, right. Well, my little story starts with little Joan, with being a pretty doggone shy child and an introverted child and a sensitive one. And I went through a lot of life, actually well into my teen years, kind of feeling that way and feeling like I didn't belong and didn't fit in and the whole thing, and feeling different. And so my big question as a child, because I had such a challenge, was what is it that makes someone confident? Because at that point, I surely did not have it. And me going and standing next to somebody or a group of people that appeared to be confident was not going to happen through osmosis for me. So I found that didn't work. So that really formed a lot of how I kind of entered the world into my adulthood. And when I got into my professional life, I found that I was challenged by a kind of a second question. And that was, what made it so difficult for people to experience unpleasant feelings? Because what I saw happening was that as much as one's thinking could create problems for oneself, that one's difficulty handling unpleasant feelings made it even harder. And it turns out for me that became kind of a life journey to kind of unpack those two questions. And it turns out that the answer to the second question about unpleasant feelings became the foundational answer to the first question about how does someone develop confidence. So that's the short story.
I want to get into the long story now because, I mean, you are an accomplished TEDx speaker and the author of 90 Seconds to the Life You Love. And the first question I want to ask you, because you've got such a repertoire of knowledge and systems behind this, is what is the relationship between uncomfortable feelings and confidence?
Well, that starts with actually me defining confidence. And the way I've defined it is, excuse me, that confidence is the deep sense that you can handle the emotional outcome of whatever you face or whatever you pursue. So if I'm going to highlight two words in that definition, it's emotional outcome. And so what I found is that someone didn't feel capable in life and capable of negotiating what life throws at us, good or bad, if you will, or what we might deem as bad. That if somebody didn't handle unpleasant feelings, which is the emotional outcome, then they were not going to be handling life very well. So my work became centered around, this body of my work became centered around 8 unpleasant feelings. And so that's really the link is that's the foundational piece to confidence. Now, there's other elements that contribute significantly to it, but that's really the first one, the foundational one.
Okay, so can we contextualize that a little bit to 2020? Because I feel like it was an emotional training ground for people, regardless of whether they were interested in training.
Uh-huh.
And I feel, without any sense of or professional capacity or certification to allow me to do this, I have seen people fall into 2 categories on the backside of 2020. They were strengthened by it because they go, oh my gosh, I can't believe I overcame all of these things that we just moved through, and in any age group, or they were victimized by it. Mm-hmm. And I'm really curious what it is that enabled people to move into one of these 2 categories. You're probably like, there's 10 other categories, Megan, but from a really high level, I was like, it's really interesting. People are either, talking about, hey, I didn't hit any of my goals, but man, did I ever grow this year? Or they're like, I can't get away from this fast enough. It was horrendous and awful in all of the ways, and I'm just escaping it.
Though the first group I would identify as people who probably take more responsibility for their lives and see themselves or see opportunity in adversity, or understand that adversity brings learning. And the second group, I would be inclined to believe, they're more tempted to blame and not take responsibility, or not take as much responsibility, and don't hold that mindset that every life experience can be a learning experience. So rather than, and that the mindset is that things are bad. You heard me kind of correct myself a moment ago, mm-hmm. to say that when I said something was bad, and then I said, well, seems bad, right? That the correction is that something's not bad till we call it bad.
Right.
Right. So the second group is when they're going through difficulties, they're calling it bad. The first group is going, oh, I'm challenged by this, but let me see what I can do with it.
Is that mindset learned? Is it genetic?
No, it's not genetic at all. Or maybe there's some genetic contribution, but I think most of that has to do with learning. The moment you realize that life doesn't do something to us, your life can change.
I love that.
It's like life, we're co-creators with life. And a good many of us don't realize that. And we are at the level of awareness where we still think life is doing something to us.
So on that note, because there's a lot of stuff coming out of this, out of 2020, a lot of expectations, like I said, placed on 2021.
Yeah.
I mean, you really say you believe that handling difficult feelings is the foundation of feeling confident. Yep. And you have a formula to help people achieve that. And in my head, I'm like, thank goodness. Because otherwise, if we just left people with, oh, there's this opportunity and this mindset, hope you can find it. I think that's a lot of pressure for people. So take us through this formula, because I was like, oh, guys, you all can have this.
Yeah, totally. And what I want to say to that too, Megan, before I jump into the formula, is that this whole confidence thing, and because it's broader than confidence, truly, but what dawned on me is that there's really a path to develop it. And when I was first starting out professionally, it's like I knew I needed to develop it. I knew that others needed to develop it, but it was like nobody's telling me how to help people do it.
Right.
It's like, no, there's no manual that was there to do that. And the truth is, the work that I did, there really is a path, or there really are a number of different things that you can do to help you understand the recipe for confidence. So let me jump into the first part of it, the foundational piece. So the formula is 1 choice, 8 feelings, 90 seconds. And a colleague of mine called it the Rosenberg reset. So I kind of liked it, so it stuck. So consider that the Rosenberg reset. And the 1 choice is choosing into awareness, not avoidance. So you can think about all the different ways we avoid. Food, screens, shopping. For men, it's often sex and pornography. For women, the shopping is often common, or the food is more common, or alcohol or other substances. So, I mean, and the list goes on, because it gets way more nuanced. Having feelings about having feelings is a way to distract. Right? So, and anxiety in my mind is a way to distract. Harsh self-criticism is a way to be in avoidance. So, and we can jump into those pieces later, but the key thing here is to understand is that it's awareness that I'm asking somebody to lean into, not avoidance and not distraction. So that's the 1 choice. So it's being aware of and in touch with as much of your moment-to-moment experience as possible. So let's go to the 8 feelings. And the 8 feelings are sadness, shame, helplessness, anger, vulnerability, embarrassment, disappointment, and frustration. Now, the first question someone's going to ask is, yeah, but anxiety and fear aren't there. And it's like, how come it's those 8? And it's these 8 because in my world, they were the most common, everyday, spontaneous reactions to things not turning out the way that people wanted or the way that they felt like they needed it to happen. So it's the everydayness of the feelings. That's why these 8. And the 90 seconds part is really the method, and it's the way to lean into the feeling itself. And the 90 seconds, there are 2 or 3 important pieces of information that are tied to that. The first is to understand we're one interconnected whole. We're not a brain and then a body, but we're one interconnected whole. The second is to understand that most of us come to know what we feel emotionally through bodily sensation. So think embarrassment, for instance, and that when one gets embarrassed, most of us experience some kind of heat at the chest, into the neck, and then into the face. Now, somebody looking at us might see the redness, but we're feeling the heat, if you will, of the bodily sensation. And that's how we know we're embarrassed. But it happens so quickly, we don't think that we're relying on a bodily sensation to make that distinction or to name the feeling. And then the third part of this is to understand that when a feeling is triggered or when a feeling kind of fires off, And then there's a rush of biochemicals into the bloodstream that actually activate those bodily sensations. And those same biochemicals flush out of the bloodstream in roughly 90 seconds. So the important element to understand here is that a bodily sensation, wave, or a feeling, in other words, is short-lived. And so my thing is if one can ride one or more short-lived bodily sensation waves of one or more of 8 unpleasant feelings, they can pursue anything they want in life. So that's how you lean into unpleasant feelings. You ride bodily sensation, short-lived bodily sensation waves. And then that's the foundational piece of confidence. Once you do that, you will actually change your experience with yourself.
And as you say that, and I think I've asked you this before, the first thing that comes to mind, I have 3 daughters, is how do I start to, one, demonstrate this, which I think I know the answer to, but the second is how do I start to get them introduced to this concept? Is there a different way of addressing it with kids, of getting their feet wet, as it were, in terms of sitting in these emotions? Because man, the 9-year-old's emotions are intense.
Well, one, I would actually teach them the idea that actually you could talk to your child about the intensity of the feeling too. It's like when you feel big, help me understand what you're going through when you start to feel these big feelings, or however you want to language it for it. For me, it's actually just taking the concept and adopting language that fits that age group. Mm-hmm. And that's the first thing. And it's to help, because a child can understand it. You can, there's an example of this one that people are teaching meditation, for instance, and they'll give young children, stuffed animals, and they'll ask the child to put the stuffed animal on their belly, and to practice deep breathing, they have to rock the stuffed animal to sleep. So it's just a matter of taking the concept and then languaging it for that age group. And it's helping them understand that the more they can learn how to experience what they're feeling and then make use of that when they stay with it. And this is what I found, is that when someone is able to stay with the feeling and actually kind of ride the bodily sensation wave. So I talk about it actually as like surfing on body surfing or being in the ocean. And that what you want to do is you want to ride the wave. And so the language for it is always about riding waves, because with the ocean, the waves come in and they always subside. And that's true with feelings as well. We think they linger, but they linger for other reasons, or that's the quality that it seems like it lingers for other reasons. And the truth is that feelings themselves are transient. They're short-lived. And so the first message to convey to children is that they're short-lived. When they can lean into them, they'll actually gain insights, and that we can then use our feelings to make decisions, to potentially speak up and express ourselves, or to take actions.
Okay, so as you're talking about this being short-lived, this idea is coming to my head. I don't have any other language for it, so I'm just going to call it as my brain is pulling it together. But I was like, I feel as though there is a thing for people, I'm just going to call it feeling debt, where there's a fear of being sad and letting the sadness out, because they go, if I start crying, I don't know when I'm ever going to stop crying. Or if I let myself get angry, the anger could go on. It could go on for days. And so I just know there's people in our audience who are going, this is longer than 90 seconds. Like, what is that? Is that a gut check that, we've got work to do? What's the lingering past the 90 seconds?
So the way I talk about it in the 90 Seconds book is that there's three main reasons that people have the experience that stuff lingers. So yeah, because people always challenge me on that. It's like, come on, that goes on for days or months. Right? So, and it doesn't. The key is feelings are transient. You just have to remember that. They're short-lived. But when we try not to think of the thing, or when we try not to experience what we're experiencing, we make it linger longer. So when we try not to know what we know, or that's one of the ways I talk about it, or we are trying to suppress our thinking about a given topic or experience, then the more we work to suppress it, the more it actually stays present. So that's what what people call thought suppression, is one way that it makes that experience kind of linger. The second is if we keep on repeating a certain thought or memory. So this happens with breakups, or this happens with situations where we think we've embarrassed ourselves. We keep on going back over and over and over and over the same doggone thought. Right.
No, people don't do that, do they?
Oh, I'm sorry. It's only me that's experienced that. When someone repeats memories or repeats thoughts, then that thought or memory is going to pull up everything that's associated with it, including the feelings. So the more you repeat, the more you keep on kind of refiring the approximate pattern that had just happened with the first time. And so that makes it feel like it lingers. And the third reason, I believe, is that people engage in harsh self-criticism. Mm-hmm. And the harsh self-criticism, for me, is a thought hijack of unpleasant feelings. And every time you stay in the thinking of the harsh self-criticism, then you're making the experience, the unpleasant feeling experience, linger longer too.
Yeah. And we talked about this. Before. And I actually thought, you had such wisdom around this notion of harsh self-criticism, but you were like, it is basically the worst thing you can do to yourself.
Yes, I do. I sincerely believe that. It is the worst thing. I think of harsh self-criticism, first of all, so people understand where I'm coming from with this. I devote many pages in the book to it because it's so important. And that is that the use of harsh self-criticism is a distraction from unpleasant feelings. So think of harsh self-criticism as a distraction from those same 8 feelings I mentioned earlier. And so it's a thought hijack of our emotional experience. So the beauty of it is, once you learn it, once you hear me say that, you can actually change it. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to encourage those who engage in it to change it, because I do think it is exponentially damaging to us. So if you are familiar with what the Richter scale is like for how they assess earthquakes, for me, it's the Richter scale of damage. So the way the Richter scale works is that every 1/10 is not 1/10, it's 10 times. There's a 10 times difference. So think of somebody who engages in harsh self-criticism, and every time they do it, just think of the exponential damage that one is doing to oneself. And that the idea here is that harsh self-criticism and unpleasant feelings are not equal. The harsh self-criticism will sink you. And I happen to think that actually might be the big contributor to suicide, that it's not unpleasant feelings that is the contributor. It's the harsh self-criticism that does people in.
Interesting. And in looking at this, moving out of that state of harsh self-criticism, and I've listened to parents talk about this. I've listened to my own patient groups talking about this, often in the context of a child or a partner. They're like, I just need to get them out of that place. In fact, what I just want for them, I just want them to be happy. And I have found in my own clinical experience that the pursuit of happiness is actually equally problematic as an end goal. And I asked you last time, I said, what are we moving towards if it's not happiness? And your answer was just without hesitation, it was inner peace. And I thought, that changed everything. Can you talk about the difference between happiness and inner peace?
Well, inner peace is the happiness. So they're not different. So when someone feels congruent within, and they're allowing the genuine experience of whatever they experience to be present for them. That's the basis of congruence. So what do I mean by congruence? At the minimum, it's 4 things that match. At the upper limit, it's more like 8 things match. But the first 4 are that one's actions match one's words, and one's words and actions match one's thoughts and feelings. That's a big task for most humans, is to have all those match. But when they match, so when you stay fully present to your experience, like I've been talking about, so you're in the awareness mode, you're in touch with what's going on, you're acknowledging it, you're trusting it, that, again, foundation. And then when all the other things match, thoughts and feelings, words and actions all match, then one feels congruent. That's, again, foundation of confidence. And it is also the foundation of inner peace.
Which is a totally different pursuit of happiness than I'm going to buy them more gifts and I'm going to take them on vacation and I'm going to give them more electronics. And
Right. It has nothing to do with that. There's a state of contentment when one is congruent.
Right.
That's the mostly everyday state. And then when you adopt attitudes that help you be resilient and help you sustain that, then everything changes, so that you can live on a day-to-day basis, almost always, or pretty frequently. It's a high proportion or high percentage that you can live in that state of inner peace, and that in my world is happiness. So it's not an external pursuit. Mm-hmm. It's the beingness. It's how we be.
That's way harder.
Well, it's way harder and way easier.
Right.
I don't look at it, right? And I don't look at it as, that's for me the whole interesting thing about this is, and I had to learn it too. When I was younger, I was looking outside for something until it dawned on me that it wasn't going to happen from the outside.
Yes.
The only way we experience that kind of confidence or that kind of growth or that kind of happiness or inner peace, it comes from the inside. So confidence is an inside job. It's not an outside job. Right.
And actually, we were having a conversation before this even started. And we're talking about, confidence in business or confidence for practitioners. And I feel like what you just said underscores the fact that confidence is not going to come because you have a 7-figure business or 100,000 people on your mailing list, or because your schedule is fully booked out. The confidence comes from doing the inner work.
100%. Yep.
You talk about this notion of emotional strength, and emotional strength as being part of confidence. I think sometimes we watch individuals and we think, oh, they're so emotionally strong. And to be honest, your work has actually planted a sense of doubt in me as to whether or not they're faking it or they're actually feeling emotional strength. Can you describe what that emotional strength looks like for real? Not the fake it till you make it kind.
Sure. Excuse me. 1 second, I'll join you for the answer in a moment. The emotional stress, again, this came out of listening to how much people pushed off asking for help, and again, this idea that people didn't feel capable of handling life. Mm-hmm. So the 2 most important elements for me around this is that understanding first that being able to experience and move through those 8 unpleasant feelings that I mentioned earlier is the crux of feeling capable, and it is the thing that people need to feel capable in life, or to capable of co-creating or dealing with life, and handling what life throws at us. So again, the capable is all internal. And it has to do with your capacity to experience and move through those 8 unpleasant feelings. That's capability. That's the first part of emotional strength. The second part of emotional strength has to do with actually being able to lean on others. And what I experienced, and again, on a day-to-day basis, I could experience this, is that people don't want to ask for help. We've been socialized to think that that's a reflection of weakness, and it's not. I think of it as it's not a sign of weakness; it's a sign of our humanity.
I love that.
It's a sign of our humanness, not of weakness, and that. And you can think of how many people talk about it as being a burden, or that they're weak, and so for me it was how do I get people to understand that asking for help is actually strength, and it is. So we're designed. Our humanness is designed to both pursue things independently, and then to be a kind of a we. So that's a me, and the other part is for us to be a we, which means leaning on others. And it's not one or the other in life. It's actually both. So I'm inviting people to welcome their dependent side of their nature and be more willing to turn to others and to ask for help and be able to do that and understand it's actually complimenting others when you ask. And that second part is actually asking for help is the second part. So it's being resourceful. The first one is being capable, handling the 8 unpleasant feelings. The second part of emotional strength is being resourceful, and that's asking for help.
It's funny, as you're saying this, I'm thinking, this right here is the curriculum for how 2020 can actually be a different path. Like 2021. 2020 was just this hot mess dumpster fire of experience. And now there's a moment here where we can take a deep breath and pursue this next year from a different angle. And I'm wondering if you can comment on that in the context of people who are really struggling with fear and anxiety about what the future can hold. And you've given us so many amazing tools. Do you have some strategies in terms of being able to acknowledge and work through the anxiety that so many people are feeling right now?
Well, the first thing for me is not to define it as anxiety.
Done. Yeah. What do you mean?
So for me, anxiety, the word anxiety just doesn't work. So here's a psychologist going, yeah, not so much with anxiety, thanks. And I know that, if we would look at statistics, 1/5 of the population will say that they experience it, at least 1/5 of the population. And so my thing around anxiety is that it's a statement that is way too vague. And if I were to ask 10 people what they meant by anxiety, I would typically get 8 to 10 different answers. So it doesn't work for me. And so I break it down. So for me, anxiety is a cover for the 8 unpleasant feelings. And not only is it a cover for the 8 unpleasant feelings, it is also another way to look at it is that it is the lack of experiencing and expressing feeling. So the first word that I would invite people to use if they're looking at the uncertainty of 2021 is to say that they're vulnerable, not anxious. So vulnerable is one of the 8.
Right.
Or vulnerability is one of the 8 feelings that I talked about, or feeling states. And so what do I mean by vulnerability? It's the sense that you could be hurt. Well, that's what we all experienced in 2020. It's not that we were anxious. It's that we got way more in touch with our vulnerability.
Right.
And so that's 2021. Let's go into 2021 going, all right, vulnerability is the thing. That I need to handle vulnerability. Well, then how do you handle vulnerability? Believe it or not, you handle the other 7 feelings. So to be able to negotiate vulnerability means being capable of handling the other 7 feelings.
This feels like a lifetime of work.
I think? Yes. Not work. Not.
Inconvenient truth.
It's not. No, it's not. It's actually, well, again, that we naturally have these feelings. It's not like anybody listening to me hasn't experienced all 8 of those feelings in their life before. I know they have.
Right.
And they're here to tell it. So they already know how to do it. They might not like it, but they already know how to experience and move through unpleasant feelings. As messy as it feels and as messy as it sounds. Except the more you welcome the whole range of what you experience, the easier it becomes.
Right.
So one piece of going into 2021 is to drop the word anxiety. Understand that 2020 sensitized us to being vulnerable. And let's go into 2021 and beyond, understanding that when we can experience and move through that experience of vulnerability, by understanding what it takes to do that is to handle the other 7 feelings, then we can approach life in a whole different way and turn those blaming experiences of, well, that was horrible, into I'm going to face adversity and go, I got this. Bring it on. I mean, don't bring the bad stuff on, or do limit that for me, thank you. But I'm in and I'm ready to go. It's okay for me to be vulnerable, and when I can be with my vulnerability, that is actually when I'm at my greatest strength.
What did you learn about yourself in 2020?
What did I learn? Probably the first answer that popped into my head, it was the capacity to handle being alone for this length of time.
Yeah, it's powerful. It's something new for so many people.
Yeah, no, I recognized at the outset, Megan, that this whole experience was one of profound profound loss and grief, and heightened vulnerability. And that this had nothing to do with social distance. It had everything to do with physical distance and social connection. Mm-hmm. So for me, the big learning, again, was always this being socially connected. And that, I live alone. And so for me, the challenge is having that limited social contact face to face. And there's something very real about not having that. And so negotiating that experience has been probably one of the biggest challenges. And again, did I break down and cry? And I've had moments of that, certainly not breaking down, but certainly tearfulness, because we're designed to be social beings. Mm-hmm. So I would say that was kind of my biggest learning.
What do you think we're going to see? As a psychologist and a clinician, and as someone who has obviously really profound insight into their own human experience, what do you think this is going to leave us with as a society and as a collective responsibility in terms of needing to manage on the backside of this social isolation experiment that we have been involved in?
My hope is that people will, and they're not yet, but my hope is that people will understand the profound importance of other human beings and begin to value others in a more precious and thoughtful way. That would be a hope. There's been a major rupture and a major tear in our human fabric. And so I'm trying to do this as politically sensitive as I can, but I can't ignore pitting human against human. Mm-hmm. And that is one of the most damaging things, among many, unfortunately, that all of us have borne witness to. And coming into 2021, probably one of my biggest invitations is for people to understand that our separation is a myth. There's not any one of us that enters this world or leaves this world a different way. We all enter it and we all leave it the same way. We're from the same fabric. And when we can adopt that and live from that place, then our whole human experience can change. So healing the rupture that we're different, and being able to come together is such a crucial. I mean, that's part of the healing, is looking at 2021 and beyond as an effort to do that.
I really love how you put that, because I was going to ask you, as clinicians and as leaders and as innovators in this audience, what do we need to be aware of as we walk into this new year? And you really summarized that so eloquently, that we have different experiences, and yet so much we have more commonalities likely than we do differences. And there's a huge opportunity to start to focus on that. Right.
It really is about our shared humanity, and until that's the big message we all have to get.
Absolutely.
Right. So it's not. And when we collectively can do that, then all our resources go to tackling the real challenges in front of us, as opposed to pitting my energy against your energy. Right. So it's not about being in competition with each other, or thinking one of us is better than another of us. But it's being able to come together and to go, all right, let's put all of our energies towards the bigger challenges we all have.
Yeah. Someone asked me the other day, they said, what have you learned in 2020? And I said, I feel as though I gleaned this awareness of the fact that depending on where I choose to vibrate, there are different outcomes. And what I mean by that is, if I'm really intentional and I stay in, I'm going to just use this language, in the highest state of vibration, what 2020 has revealed for me is a heightened capacity for empathy towards other people. And when I slip into a state of fear, or anger, or frankly, any of those other feelings, I can quickly make myself also aware of the advantages that I have in my environment and in our social structure. And I can see how, without a conscious desire to move into that state of empathy, how people can just sit in a state of fear and just actualize on their advantage or their loophole or their that very foundational need to survive. And so this acknowledgement of hanging out in that place of empathy takes more work, but it's infinitely more rewarding.
Absolutely. I love that. That's great.
Yeah. But there was so much this year, and I feel like we've explored a ton. And we've given everyone so much content and awareness and opportunity to walk into 2021 in a different headspace. And I'm wondering if we can shift gears on the conversation a little bit. And I have a section in our interviews, I call them our KPIs, or key performance indicators. So just like we have them in our business, I believe we have them in our lives as well. And I've got some rapid fire questions for you, if you'll indulge me.
I will indulge you. Okay.
All right. First one. What's the most impactful book or conversation that you have read or had during the pandemic?
Oh boy, that one's a little bit too hard to answer. Book-wise, the one of the books that had a huge impact on me was a book called Second Firsts, which is a book in essence about grieving and moving through grief. So that was the conversations. There were so many of them. I'd be hard pressed to kind of it would take me a while to think about what the most impactful one was. But the book that stood out was Second Firsts.
What's the one thing you're most consistent with respect to your health?
Attitude.
Ooh, I like it.
It's always you mentioned kind of vibration. It's always staying in the kind of thinking that will help me be resilient. So it's keeping in mind things like that. Every experience in life is a learning experience.
I love that.
asking questions that can keep me centered. So how can I take this experience and have it bring out the best in me? Attitude and belief is really the key thing that keeps me centered around that stuff.
It's perfect, and it's totally on brand, Dr. Rosenberg.
Thank you.
What is something totally badass about you that people would not otherwise know?
That's something totally badass about me. I have a good sense of humor.
I love it.
I had other things that came to mind, but I'll go with that.
Okay, I'm really glad about that, because I always have this hesitation around dropping any element of sarcasm in my interviews with psychologists. But I did it anyway today. I was like, I just feel it. I feel like I can do it. So I'm glad I know that, so that I can do that more often with you. What do you do for fun or play?
I love playing cards. So very social activity. I grew up with it, and so board games and cards and things that bring people together and in really nice, comfortable ways is one of the things I love.
Okay, I love it. We're going to compare board games another time.
Awesome.
And last question for you. Entrepreneurism, are we born this way, or do we learn to become entrepreneurs?
It's both. I think there's probably some genetic component to the measure, like risk-taking kind of things. But a lot of it is learned. There's a lot of entrepreneurs that become entrepreneurs because they grew up in a family of entrepreneurs. There's also a number of them that become that way because they grew up in very difficult life circumstances and sort of said, I'm never going to let this happen again. And so that they want to take the lead and not have the forces of life, if you will, defined, so that they go forward. And so that's socialized. So I think it's a little bit of a combination of both.
I love it. Spoken like a true expert into the human psyche. Dr. Joan Rosenberg, you have so much wisdom and insight. Where can we direct people so they can learn more about your work? drjoanrosenberg.com. There's also gifts there if they want to download stuff. In fact, if they put drjoanrosenberg.com//gift, then they can download the things. There's countless other work that's on those pages. And if they punch in my name they may see a LinkedIn learning course. They might see my TED Talks. They might see a bunch of podcasts, etc. So I'm available if you just kind of put my name into the internet, into the Google.
Into the search, yes.
Amazing. We will hook everyone up in our show notes. It's been a pleasure, like always. Thanks so much for being here.
No, it's a real treat, Megan. I just totally enjoyed our conversation.
Oh, thank you. Have an amazing day.
You too. All right.
Anthropology is the study and science of what makes entrepreneurs tick. It's the confluence of the mindset, strategic thinking, and health that we bring to the table as individuals compelled to create and contribute in this world. You know, it's a lonely place to be at the top. It's a lonely place to feel like you are different, which is why we have our Anthropology Collective, a free Facebook group where women just like you gather to explore the ideas, philosophy, health, optimization, and the notion of purpose that we bring to our lives. The Anthropology Collective is open to anyone. You can find us on Facebook, and it's where people just like you are going to be hanging. Until next week, live life on, in, and with purpose. I'm your host, Dr. Megan Walker, and I will talk to you soon.